No, he's a fisher of fish.
With other men.
Well, let's see. I can't see what I'm. I gotta move this out. I gotta get a better angle. So here we are, Bible prophecy lesson number 240. It is the 20th day of October 2019 for those who are counting. So today it's Isaiah chapter 10. We'll review lesson 239, which was Isaiah 9 and 10, 8 and 9. I got a whole bunch of signs of the times and a few scriptures, and then we'll do Isaiah chapter 10. So let's open class with a word of prayer. Blessed are you, O Lord, our God, King of the universe, our creator and maker, and the one in whom we live and move and have our being. We're grateful for life, and we're grateful for this group of like-minded fellow servants of yours, and that you've given us this time that we can gather together and consider these words that you have left for us to find here and to share with each other the burdens of life. And we just pray, Lord, that you would ease our burdens over this coming week and give us a moment of respite. And as you know, many of us are carrying heavy loads. And if you would lighten those loads, we would certainly appreciate it. And so until we see you coming on the clouds of heaven, we pray that you would be with us all in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Lesson 239, we learned that Isaiah and the people of God are for signs and wonders in Israel. Any idea how that works? How are the people of God signs and wonders? Well, I can see lots of signs and wonders in the book of Isaiah. He's got prophecies in there that tell us for sure that there is a God, and he is the God who creates light and darkness, good and evil, and the one who knows the end from the beginning. And Isaiah has recorded lots of those ends that are going to occur from the beginning, which was 700 BC, in that general range of time. So the people of God, well, Israel, the Jews, they shouldn't be around. How many people do we know that can show a history clear back to Adam practically? Very few can do that. Just the fact they're in existence is kind of a sign and a wonder. And then in that chapter, in verse 9, we hear the story that a child is born, a son is given, and the increase of his government shall be without end. Wow. 700 years before Christ was even born, he was prophesied that he would come and not only free and take care of the sins of the nations and of the world, but this story, the increase of his government shall be without end. That is mind-blowing to me, because like I said last time, it looks like we're in a pyramid scheme here that goes on forever and ever, and we're at the top. So, boy, hard to ponder that. And then we saw this message that was given to Jacob that falls on Israel. And of course, who was Israel? Well, at the time this message was given, Israel was in the northern part of kingdom of Israel, I guess. They called themselves Israel. The southern kingdom was called the Kingdom of Judah. And they were going into captivity in 722 by Shalmaneser V. And so this strange term, the message given to Jacob that falls on Israel, well, this message is the bricks have fallen down, but we will rebuild with hewn stones. The sycamores are cut down, but we will replace them with cedars. And of course, Jonathan Cahn's book, The Harbinger, lists 9 events that occur with the destruction of the towers of 911. And the long and the short of it is, when God is trying to get your attention, and if you claim to be a follower of his and a nation under God, he will send you a warning. And I believe that warning we got was our hedge of protection is being removed because our country has never been attacked before. Well, I guess you could argue we were attacked by Japan because they sent some balloons over that tried to start a forest fire. They were totally unsuccessful.
Well, Pearl Harbor, that's still,
Yeah, but the contiguous 48 were never attacked.
yeah, not this.
So this argument that the bricks have fallen down and so forth sure looks like it applies to 911. Any observations about last lesson? All perfectly clear, of course. Bernie waited a day in Vegas to get his angioplasty. In Norway, he would have waited 39 days. In Finland, and Bernie cited as an inspiration for his program, he would have waited 22 days. In Sweden, Bernie would have waited 42 days. And in Cuba, he would have died. So it goes to show you, though, socialism doesn't work.
What about Venezuela?
In Venezuela, they don't have doctors.
Well, under Obamacare, he wouldn't have had anything but a pill, because he's over 70 years old.
Give him take 2 aspirin and call me next year.
But
Yeah.
he's a millionaire.
He's a millionaire, so he can go get his own doctors, buy his own doctors. Isn't that the way it works? Even in socialist countries, the people who are in control, they're the millionaires. Everybody else works for them.
That's right.
So, boy, oh boy. Oh, here's a good one for you. Kane West aims to save souls.
Kanye.
In James Kanye. Oh, Kanye.
He's not into Kanye West.
I don't know who the guy is.
Anyway.
All I know is he's had a transformation, and he has got this. I don't know what it is, whether it's a movie or just what. I guess it's a movie. Jesus is the King.
It's music.
It's music. It's a musical.
He's
Okay.
our musical. It's music.
Well, he dropped a trailer on Saturday, and it says, "We are here to spread the gospel. I'm not here for your entertainment."
Amen.
How in the world is this guy getting by? You can't say that. Guess he can get away with it.
When he met with Trump.
Apparently, he had a come to Jesus moment. And he says, "I'm an evangelist, so my music, my films, and every conversation, every room I go in, we're here to save souls and to save you from eternal damnation."
Amen.
Hey,
I like it.
he's going to save you. And so apparently this thing was filmed in the summer of 2019, and apparently it was done out in the desert. And so the thing that's it's amazing to me, because I don't follow this guy, but being a rapper, there's a certain air that you have to maintain if you're going to sell records, and one of them is you got to be a gangster or something like that, right? Or look like one, yeah. And I don't know what this guy looks like, but it sounds to me like he has had a dramatic transformation.
Amen.
And I remember, of course, the press never reported it much, but Elvis Presley, he was a staunch Christian and had been seen praying over people. And when all of the elites from Hollywood would come up to see him at Las Vegas, he would let a certain number of them into his room with his guys, and he would make them get in a circle and hold hands and pray.
Amen.
Oh, if they only knew what he was, he would never have sold any records.
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash, there's another one. Another guy kind of reminds you of Paul. He started out in a pretty rough existence, and
He went through some very tough times.
yeah, boy, did he.
Jim Carter saw him through his addictions.
Yeah. So it just goes to show you, we all be sinners. Some of us just be able to hide it better than others, but these guys, their sins and iniquities were there for all to see, and yet they claim to be Christians.
Yeah, I couldn't
Isn't that a-
believe my wife tells on me.
Yeah. I was never able to sell that story much myself. That's what happens when you get married. You know, you got a wife that's a witness against you. Oh, in the U.S., the decline of Christianity continues at a rapid pace. The religious landscape in the United States continues to change at a rapid clip. The Pew Research Center telephone surveys conducted in 2018 and 19, 65% of American adults described themselves as Christians when asked about their religion, down from 12% over the last decade. Meanwhile, the religiously unaffiliated share of the population, consisting of people who describe their religious identity as atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular, stands at 26%, up from 17% in 2009. We're not going in the right direction.
Well, they never called me.
Wonder if they're
They
using
never called me
landlines
either.
there or cellular lines.
I don't know.
Did you see, when I watched the Democratic debates on Tuesday night, there was an advertisement
Makes you
for
want to throw up.
atheism.
Ron Reagan.
CNN, atheism.
From Ron Reagan.
Ron Reagan.
Oh, yeah, Ron Reagan. Now, isn't
He's not
that
afraid of
something?
Reagan.
Do you think we could get a Christian commercial on that at the same time? I don't think so. I don't happen.
Jeffers was at Trump's Dallas rally.
Yeah.
Pastor in Dallas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Pastor Jeffries. Yeah. So,
He got a call late.
I think we've got a clear choice here. If you be a Christian,
Adopted son's a born-again Christian.
and now, even though Christianity is going down in this country, atheism is declining. How's that? A few months ago, good folks at the Center for Study of Global Christianity released a 2019 edition of their Status of Global Christianity report. There's a lot of fascinating information there. Some more significant stats are detailed in the Lifeway article, Surprising Trends in Global Christianity in 2019. Like the fact that Christianity is growing faster than the population is, or that the percentage of the unevangelized individuals in the world has shrunk from 54.3% to 28.4% today. So whereas it's going down in our country percentage-wise as far as Christianity is concerned, it looks like the whole world, it's going in the other direction. Boy. Uh-oh. Here we go. The Pope could learn from 3 ancient Israelites who stood up to idolatry. They certainly could. Well, back on October the 18th, a pagan ceremony occurred in the Vatican Gardens. And they had a priestess shaking her maracas and worshiping 2 statues of naked women. Numerous people, including a Franciscan priest, prostrated themselves in front of these statues. This is getting bizarre, folks.
Define Morocco.
Yeah, Morocco. Well, the Vatican released a statement clarifying that the statue was that of the Virgin Mary. Well, that makes it all right. A naked Virgin Mary. Well, nobody bought into that story. But the Bible provides many examples of the folly of idol worship. So here we go. Just as the 17th chapter of Revelation reports, there is a religious organization founded in a place founded on 7 hills called the Vatican. And it is living up to its end prophecies. Now, here's a good one. What is the wrath of God by Monsignor Charles Pope? Well, the wrath of God is not merely an Old Testament concept. In fact, it is mentioned quite frequently in the New Testament as well, and here are a few of the many New Testament passages. And he goes on to relate those. But here's the interesting thing. He says, we all must be washed clean of the incompatibility of sin before God. We must be washed clean in the blood of the Lamb, and most of us will need purification in purgatory too. Now, I don't know. How do you decide whether you're going to purgatory or not? What is the standard test for that?
The priest.
I bet you have to cross his palm with silver to get out of there. Don't you think?
Yes.
Whoops. Another worst kept secret is finally out. Whoever has had, as I have happened on several times, the luck of meeting him, talking about the Pope, and speaking to him with the utmost cultural confidence, knows that Pope Francis conceives Christ as the Jesus of Nazareth man, not the God incarnate. Once incarnated,
Prophet.
Jesus ceases to be God and becomes a man until his death on the cross. Pope Francis told me they are a demonstrable proof that Jesus of Nazareth once became a man, might have been a man of exceptional virtues, but he was not a god at all.
Wait a minute. Then why is Mary so precious?
Well, she gave birth to God, didn't
No, she gave birth to a man, according to
she? She
the
gave
Pope.
birth to him. We have just
She did not
ruined
give birth to God because he
this.
was incarnate.
This is terrible. We're going to go
He
back
just
and
pulled his whole theology out from under himself.
But he was
That's
special.
stupid.
there's a lot of hocus pocus going on here.
This pope is way off. This pope is, I'm thinking out loud. No pope, with me growing up in the Catholic Church, I don't know about Christine, I've never seen a pope like this.
Well, nobody else has either. He is Petrus Romanus, yeah.
I got a question on purgatory. I have a friend who, he was praying to get out of purgatory. He gave the priest so much money every time. And about the fourth time, the priest said, what? You're only one step away to get out of purgatory. It's $500 more. He said, oh, hell, I just jumped the rest of the way.
Oh, boy, oh. Oh, Paula White on why she became Trump's spiritual advisor and why he'll carry the evangelical vote in 2020. You know who this woman is? You remember Benny Hinn? She used to be married to Benny Hinn. And she's his spiritual advisor. And of course, we got polls saying that 81% of evangelicals are going to support Trump. But Trump's spiritual advisor, Paula White, prays to stop every demonic network against him. Well, I tell you what, we all better be praying because there's a lot of demonic forces out there against this guy.
Well,
I
they're
mean-
already praying, we're gonna put a hex on him for Halloween again. They did that last year. The hex
Yeah.
used-
Yeah, their hex didn't work too good.
Oh, ridiculous.
So,
But think about it, you just use your common sense. You have a whole group of people who claim to be witches, Satanists, and they are all wanting to curse Donald Trump. What does that tell you? I mean, that on its own ought to tell you what side do you want to be on? Who do you want to support?
Yeah.
Where witches and Satanists are against him, on the side of witches and Satanists.
You can't be a Democrat and be a Christian. No way.
well, you can't be a good one.
You can be anything and be a Christian.
Yeah.
Christians
Yeah.
don't
Just
fit
about.
because they don't stand for Christian values.
Well, they don't, but that gets us back to the whole story again, that, you know, we all be sinners.
Yeah.
And the Apostle Paul was a terrorist before he was a Christian. And so we all come from different places and carry different burdens.
Apostle Paul, his name used to be
Saul
Saul, right?
Saul of Tarsus,
Okay, how come they changed his name? I think they changed
because
it.
he scared them so bad that they couldn't go around using his old name because they wouldn't have anything to do with him. He was known for killing Christians,
Right.
and they were scared of him, and so he changed his name.
Supervise the stoning of Stephen.
Stephen, yeah. He was,
It goes back to God loves the sinner and hates the sin.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so we're all sinners.
yeah. But on the other hand, too, you know, David, who was, well, premeditated murderer,
Premeditated murder.
just because we are saved doesn't mean that you escape all culpability, because he paid for his sins, and in many respects, in some of the events in life. I mean, just because you're forgiven doesn't mean the consequences all go away.
That's right.
And some of us carry more consequences than others.
But
Oh.
also, those who have been forgiven more love God more, or love Jesus.
Ain't that the way it works?
Remember, yeah,
Look at Paul.
yeah.
That guy worked himself to death because he knew how great a burden he had been. And you're exactly right. Those of us who have grown up in the church and never knew the other lifestyle at all, well, yeah, we love the Lord and all, but like you point out, those who have been down the other pathway, they just love him more. How could you not?
Like the woman who washed his feet and dried his, feet with her hair at the Pharisee's home, and that's what he told that Pharisee.
Yeah,
She's been forgiven more, the one's been forgiven more loves more.
yeah. So a life lesson there for all of us.
those that turn to Christ on their own. I guess,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Well, you think you turned to him on his own, but he was looking for you all the time. He puts people, places, and things in your path, so you will find him if you are one of those who are called. Now, this interesting first paragraph here, first verse of Isaiah chapter 10. Woe to those who decree unrighteous decrees. Do we have any examples of unrighteous decrees today in our government? Man, I can't find any righteous decrees. So, who write misfortune which they have prescribed. Oh, do we got any misfortune writers out there? To rob the needy of justice, to take away what is right from the poor of the people, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless. What will you do on the day of punishment, and in the desolation which comes from afar? To whom will you flee for help, and where will you leave your glory? Well, this kind of sounds like something that's applicable today, because the day of punishment's coming real soon, in our lifetime. Hopefully in our lifetime. And what do you do when you turn someday and look up at the sky and see this big, bright, glowing ball headed your way? What are you going to do? Where do you run? Like they say when you're under an A-10 attack, you can run, but you'll just die tired. Without me they shall die, they shall bow down among prisoners, and they shall fall among the slain. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is still outstretched. Woe to Assyria, the rod of mine anger, and the staff in whose hands is my indignation. I will send him against an ungodly nation, and against the people of my wrath I will give him charge to seize spoil, to take prey, to tread them down like the mire in the streets. Clearly, God is willing to forgive Israel of their sins, but there's consequences to pay for worshiping idols and going astray. And God sends, rod of his anger, who is the Assyrians. And 700 years ago, he sent the Assyrians, and they took the northern tribe into captivity in 722. And then, in just the early part of the 680 or so BC, that's when Sennacherib showed up on the scene, and he is going to attack Jerusalem. And we'll hear his story here in a moment. But the point I wanted to make here is that Assyria is the rod of God's anger. He uses them as an instrument of chastisement. It was true back then, and guess what?
Turkey.
Well, Turkey is a part of the Assyrian Empire, and so is Iran. And he is going to send them against an ungodly nation. Is Judah an ungodly nation today? There's more secularists there than there are Orthodox. There's a map of Iran, and you can kind of see its boundaries. And then Syria, it didn't get all of Iran, but it got the capital. It was a part of the ancient Assyrian Empire. So that region of the world, which includes a big chunk of Turkey, these are the people that you can expect God to use at the end of the age to come down and, come against Israel. Not Israel, it's Judah today. Because these people have come full circle. They started out worshiping idols. At least the Jews today don't worship idols, but then again, if you're a secular humanist, you have your own idols. Maybe they're cars, maybe that's money, who knows? Television, yeah. Some have even argued that sports is a religion because, people live and die. Fortunately, those who follow the Astros are living, at least for another day. Yeah, and the Texas Longhorns just barely pulled one out
That was a good game.
in the last 4 seconds of the game. Boy. So, moving right along. Yet he does not mean to do so. That means the Assyrian, he didn't really intend to come down there, nor does his heart think so, but it is in his heart to destroy and to cut off not a few nations. This guy is the height of arrogance and pride, and he believes that he can attack anybody, and he supports his belief by saying, well, aren't all of my vassals kings? Is not Calno like Carchemish? Is not Hamath like Arphad? Is not Samaria like Damascus? So all he's saying is, hey, all these cities and countries, hey, I wiped them all out. I attacked them, and they weren't nothing. They're all... And that's where these cities he's mentioning were at the time. And Arphad was a city in northern Syria, cited as an example of the Assyrian conquest. So they were just wiping that whole region. And as my hand has found the kingdoms of idols whose carved images excel those of Jerusalem and Samaria, as I have done to Samaria and her idols, shall I not also do to Jerusalem and her idols? Well, Samaria, that was basically the northern kingdom, right? Well, in 722, wiped them out. Carried them off into captivity, put them out there on the south side of the Caucasus Mountains, and they left the stage of history, at least most of what we recall as history. So therefore, it shall come to pass when the Lord has performed all of his work on Mount Zion and on Jerusalem, that he will say, I will punish the fruit of the arrogant heart of the king of Assyria and the glory of his haughty looks. One thing that God doesn't like is pride and haughty looks. So if you are a politician and you exhibit pride and haughty looks, I wouldn't give you a plug nickel for your...
I'm waiting for the punishment now. Just keep waiting.
Yeah, me too. For he says, that's the king of Assyria, by the strength of my hand have I done it, and by my wisdom, for I am prudent. Also I have removed the boundaries of the people, and I've robbed their treasures, so I have put down the inhabitants like a valiant man. Well, this sounds like a pretty arrogant guy, doesn't it? Yeah, he has done everything by his own strength. Ever know anybody like that?
Yeah, a president.
I know a few presidents like that. It's all me, I, my.
That's right.
Seems like I recall a president who could not make a speech without referring to himself at least 100 times.
Me.
So my hand has found like a nest the riches of the people, and as one gathers eggs that are left, I have gathered all the earth, and there is no one who moved his wing, nor opened his mouth even a peep. Now shall the axe boast itself against the one who chops with it? Or shall the saw exalt itself against the one who saws with it? As if a rod could wield itself against those who lift it up, or as a staff could lift up, as it were, not wood. So,
Can you tie in what's happening right now with Turkey and Syria?
Turkey and Syria are all part of the ancient Assyrian Empire.
I'm wondering where that's going.
Where that's going, here's my observation on that. We do know from Daniel that there are going to be a kind of an 8-nation confederacy. And the 8th head is the Antichrist, and that is Iran. And it says that 3 will be uprooted. We are looking for 3 countries in that region to be uprooted and jump on the Iranian bandwagon. And after that happens, the rest of the Islamic countries in that region will join up, because they're either going to join up or they're going to get uprooted themselves. So we are looking for 3 countries to be uprooted. My observation would be that Iraq has got to be the first one to go, because they are they're indefensible right now. My suspicion also is that although they're not called a nation, they really are, and that's the Kurds. They are the ancient Medes. Remember the Medo-Persian Empire? I don't know if they'll be uprooted or just what. My suspicion is they'll probably be uprooted. And then you got Syria. Well, it doesn't look like Syria will be uprooted because they're already on the side of Iran. But Kuwait, very small country, I think they'll get uprooted pretty quick. Qatar, You can come up with 3 in there, any region. I think Qatar is kind of a pain in the side of the Iranians. So maybe they are a candidate for it too. But Saudi Arabia, they can't defend themselves. And if we follow this projection of Trump, which I think we probably will, what does he say? He says, I don't know why we should have American blood over there in the middle of wars that have gone on for hundreds of years. Why should we try to be the policemen of the world? What's going to happen? Pull them all out. And then what's going to happen? The vacuum that's left over, then you're going to have Iran. And they're going to jump in there and take control of the whole Middle East. They will control the oil. And if you control the oil in the Middle East, you control the world. And so you can see the mechanism through which Islam is going to reign supreme pretty quick.
Well, I wondered if this decision by Trump of pulling those 50 troops out is going to start all that in motion.
It may very well
I want to
be.
meet these 50 troops, because those are some awesome fighters, if they're the ones that are keeping the whole Middle East under their thumb.
Hey,
If it's
yeah, I got 50
There's
guys
gotta be
over there.
Marines over there.
Hey, got to be Marines. SEAL Team 6 or something.
Spoken like a former Marine.
What about China? Don't you think they'll join them? Because we can't.
No, here's what happens. China is a protagonist of the regime of Iran. And when we pull out of there and something else happens to us, such that we are inerted, I don't know what that is, but something, probably the rapture. But what happens is when we're inerted, China is going to look down at the Middle East, and they're going to see it in control of the Islamists. They need the oil.
Oh, yeah.
So what are they going to do?
They're gonna join.
They have built a massive highway right up to the edge of India. Now, why did they do that? Because they know someday soon they're going into the Middle East. That's in their long-term plans. Russia is sitting up here watching China, and they're saying, oh no, you're not going to do that. We are going to beat you down there. And so what you've got now is a conflagration of forces in the Middle East ending up on the plains of Megiddo.
Battle of Armageddon.
And they got the Battle of Armageddon right there. So we can see the elements begin to put themselves in place right now. And this ancient Assyrian Empire is part of the story. My hand, where are we? Oh, we're Therefore the Lord of hosts, will send leanness among the fat ones, and under his glory he will kindle a burning like a burning of a fire. So that the light of Israel will be for a fire, and the Holy One a flame, and he will burn and devour its thorns and its briars in one day. And it will consume the glory of the forest and the fruitful field by both soul and body, and they will be as when a sick man wastes away. What's that all about? In one day, he's going to burn them all up. Sounds like a micronova to me. And that's exactly what's going to happen in many other passages in the scripture about this. In Isaiah chapter 30, it says, there will be on every high mountain and on every high hill rivers and streams of water. Now, how in the world does that work? Well, hold on for a second.
All the moisture pops up into the
That's what happens. What happens is when this thing hits, according to the Diehold Foundation, it evaporated about 1,000 feet of water out of the oceans. This is a
They'll say the
huge.
rising oceans, so.
Yeah, now we got them taken care of. Now the rising oceans have risen above our heads. And in the day of the great slaughter, when the towers fall, moreover, the light of the moon will be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun will be sevenfold as the light of 7 days. In that day, when the Lord binds up the bruise of his people and heals the stroke of their wound. Behold, the name of the Lord comes from afar, burning with anger, and his burden is heavy, and his lips are full of indignation, and his tongue is a devouring fire. Well, now to those who are atheists or secularists, and those who know about what's going to happen to our sun in the very, very near future, they're going to say, these prophecies of old, that doesn't have to do with anything. We're just sitting here in reality. We just know that the sun is going to do that, and so consequently, there is no God. This is just what happens when you happen to be unlucky enough to be around when your sun goes into a micronova stage. But the problem is, this was prophesied years ago. The events are unmistakable because that's exactly what will happen. The light of the moon is going to be reflected off of that sevenfold blasting of all sorts of electromagnetic radiation, light, photons, and everything. It's going to hit the moon and it's going to shine like the sun.
Will we get asteroids before this event happens?
What's that?
Will we have asteroids before or after?
Well, I tell you what I think. I think we're going to have them a long time before, like 7 years before, because the whole tribulation period gets kicked off when a big asteroid hits. And toward the very end of the 7 bowl judgments, it says that the earth is hit with a bunch of 100-pound meteors that pound the earth, to a pulp, literally. It says that it was a severe plague. And if you look at the pictures of Nibiru, the whole area around it is full of junk. Because where our sun goes into a micronova once every 12,068 years, Nibiru, which is a very much smaller sun-like object, it blows its atmosphere off once a 365-day year of our solar system. So it's constantly blowing stuff off every year. And that's why there's a huge cloud of debris around it. And it's all iron and rust. And
What about a comet? Didn't that possibly hit with a comet also?
well, whether it's a comet or an asteroid or whatever, the effect's going to be the same. Moving right along. Now, the rest of the trees of his forest will be so few, the number that the child may write them. This is going to burn up everything. It's going to burn up the trees, the grass, the people. And it will come to pass in that day. Anytime you see that word in that day, we're talking about the day of the Lord. That the remnant of Israel, such have escaped the house of Jacob, will never again depend upon him who defeated them, that's the Assyrians, but will depend upon the Lord, the Holy One of Israel, in truth. The remnant will return, the remnant of Jacob, to the mighty God. So it's typical of the nature of Israel and Judah. They fall away, and then they get the pajabbers beat out of them, and then they change their mind. So, for though your people, O Israel, as the sand of the sea, a remnant of them will return. So, wait a minute. If Israel is as the sand of the sea, does that adequately describe the people in the land of Israel today? No, there are just a few million folks there. You can't describe them as being numbered as the sand of the sea. There's got to be another population group that fills the bill. And of course, my theories on that, and that is the United States, Great Britain, and probably the European countries. Say again?
The 12 tribes.
The 12 tribes, where they went. Ephraim, Manasseh, we know where Dan went.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of people who don't know that they're of Jewish descent, and they are all over the place.
Oh, absolutely right.
Are we talking about people who by DNA, or are we talking about people who descend from?
Well, they should be, the DNA should.
Well, no, because the DNA is not going to show you, unless you're an Ashkenazi Jew. That is the only one where you will say, oh, and then there's the Sephardic Jews who want to argue that they are not real Jews because they want to argue, I guess. But there's people who can't prove it, but may not even know.
Well, I would submit to you that most of the people of Israel don't know they're of Israel. Caucasian. How many Caucasians do we have? Well, where did that word come from? Well, it's because Israel was south of the Caucasus Mountains, and that's where they got their name Caucasian. And so Caucasians are descendants from Israel. And Second Ezra shows that how they went across the Caucasus Mountains and went around the Caucasus Mountains, and how they populated the lands to the north and to the west of the Caucasus. And so, Yeah, we know where they went, but they don't know who they are. In fact, the prophecies in Hosea says that Israel is going to lose their way, they're going to be divorced, and they're not even going to know who they are. Here we are, proof positive. So, Israel, be as the sand of the sea, but only a remnant will return. For the Lord of hosts will make a determined end in the midst of all the land. Therefore, says the Lord of hosts, O my people who dwell in Zion, do not be afraid of the Assyrian. He shall strike you with the rod and lift up his staff against you in the mountain. For yet in a very little while his indignation will cease, as my anger in their destruction. And the Lord of hosts will stir up a scourge for him, like the slaughter of Midian at the rock of Oreb. And his rod was on the sea, so he will lift up in the manner of Egypt. And it shall come to pass in that day that his burden will be taken away from your shoulder, and his yoke from your neck, and the yoke will be destroyed because of the anointing oil. Or maybe that's because of the anointed one. And he will come to Aath. He has passed Migron. At Mishmash he has attended his equipment. Basically, these names here, Aath, Migron, Mishmash, Aath is 33 miles northwest of Jerusalem. Migron, 7 miles. Mishmash, 6 miles. And here he comes. Geba, 3 miles. Ramah, about 2.5. And Gibeah, whatever that is, it's even closer. And Golim and Anathoth, even. And finally it says, as he will remain at Nob that day. That's just outside of Jerusalem. And he will shake his fist at the daughter of Zion, the hill of Jerusalem. And behold, the Lord of hosts will lop off the bough with terror. Those of high stature will be hewn down, and those haughty will be humbled. And he will cut down the thickets of the forest with iron, and Lebanon will fall by the mighty one. Now that's an interesting statement. He's going to cut down the forest with iron. Where do you suppose he gets that iron from? Sounds like an asteroid attack, doesn't it? Or meteors or something. That's right. Actually happened. Well, thus says the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into this city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come with it with shield, nor build a siege mount against it. By the way he came, the same he will return, and he shall not come into this city, says the Lord. This was the admonition that Hezekiah got from God when Sennacherib surrounded his city with about 300,000 troops and was taunting Jerusalem, saying, hey, let me give you some horses, because let me give you about 10,000 horses. Oh, forget, you don't even have 10,000 men to mount them. And he was just hassling them and ridiculing them and to him. Then an angel of the Lord went out and killed in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. And when the people arose early in the morning, there were their corpses, all dead. Well, what happened? Well, now that's an interesting story, what happened. And there are lots of theories about it, one of which they got hit with a meteor storm. Another one is they got hit with a lightning bolt. A lightning bolt? I don't know. How can one lightning bolt kill all this kind of... Well, let's... Earth has had in the past close encounters with Mars. Virtually all of the ancient calendars were initially based on a 360-day year, 12 months of 30 days apiece. However, all calendars changed in 701 BC. They resort to adjustments to accommodate the current sidereal reckoning. How did that happen? Here's the theory. Mars got kicked into a highly elliptical orbit at the last passing of Nibiru. And orbit went outside that of the Earth and came back around. And about every 12, 15 years, Mars came so close to the Earth that it scared the pajabbers out of everybody, and there were interplanetary lightning strikes in between the two planets. And at one crossing, at around 700, what happened was the Earth was kicked out of its orbit of 360 days per year into an orbit of 365, and that energy that was taken out of Mars dropped its highly elliptical orbit into a more circular orbit, and it never came close to the Earth again. Now, the reason people believe that, empirical evidence, and here's one of it. Jonathan Swift, you remember him, Gulliver's Travels? Well, in his book, he made mention of the fact that these people in Lilliputian, the little people, they knew about Mars and the fact that it had 2 moons, and they knew the orbit. How did they know that? Because we didn't even know that Mars had any moons until 151 years after 1726. So how did people know that? Well, they knew it because they saw Mars up close and personal. And apparently the cyclical near pass-bys of planet Mars about every 108 years were a key factor in the significant series of catastrophic intrusions that ultimately resulted in Mars or Ares or Baal being worshipped and universally feared by ancient cultures. These pass-bys were accompanied by, among other things, interplanetary lightning. Now, interestingly, there is a rock in the middle of Australia called, of all things, Ayers Rock. The word Ayers means Mars in most languages, in Greek particularly. Ayers Rock has no business being there. Geologists scratch their heads and walk away. They have no explanation for why that rock is there. It's a bunch of fused sandstone. Velikovsky and others have made note of this rock because, well, it's 350 meters tall, over 1,000 feet tall, and about 5 or 6 miles in circumference. This thing is the result of an interplanetary lightning strike. And when it hit the ground, what you're seeing here on the surface is like an iceberg. You only see 10% of it. The rest of it is underground because the lightning strike went straight to the core of the Earth and it fused everything along the way. Wow. And that's what we're just seeing, the surface of this thing. So the point is there is geological evidence all over the planet that we have had interplanetary lightning strikes. Huge amounts of electricity were exchanged. And the death of those 185,000 probably was an interplanetary lightning strike.
Do they have a rock like that in that area?
None. This thing, you can see the land is flat all the way around. You go for miles, there is nothing.
No, where the king was outside of the Northern Kingdom when when 180,000
got killed.
Wouldn't that create a big
sandstorm? You would think so. I don't know. I don't have the background on that. My suspicion is that there's probably something there that would support that. Now, the lightning strike may not have been that big, obviously, or would have taken out of all of Israel. But there are those, some historical documents say that Sennacherib, he didn't die, but he was burnt pretty bad. So generally, if it had been a meteor strike, it would have just beat the tar out of them. Yeah. But a lightning strike, it would have killed them, but there would have still been something there left that you could observe, and it wouldn't have just, smashed them and left a big crater.
Well, and also, that's all possible, but isn't it possible that just like the Bible says, the angel of the Lord killed 185,000?
The angel of the Lord
killed the firstborn?
Yep. I can't argue with that. But it's entirely possible also that this is the mechanism that the angel used.
And then he just deafened everybody else so they wouldn't wake up with all that going on.
With all that going off. Well, it didn't talk about that part of the story.
But I think it's also possible, just like with the Passover, the first Passover, the angel of the Lord went and he killed those that he wanted to kill.
Oh, I can't argue with you, but I'm just saying there is an argument that says this was a so-called natural event. Which it's still in control of God, however way you want to look at it. So, the end. Yes?
During the tribulation period, the Bible talks about 140,000. to be Christian. You think, well, that's probably the Jews?
They're
Are
a-
we doing tribulation or different time?
That is in the midst of the tribulation.
That's what I figured.
Before, these people are sealed on their foreheads so that these locust-type creatures which are on the planet during that time, these locust-type creatures will leave them alone. And they will be like 144,000 Jewish Billy Grahams. And evangelization will be in their hands for that period of time. And then they're taken up.
Amen.
So, they're not Christians per se, they are Israelites. Of the 12 tribes, save the tribe of Dan. For some reason, he was left out.
Witnesses used to claim it was gonna be them, but now they oversee the 144,000.
Yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses have a theological problem there because they said as soon as we get to 144,000, that's going to be it.
Yeah.
Well, they got to be about 1 million, then they had to change their theology. That's a bummer when that happens, you know. Oh, man.